Welcome back, sports fans. This is the Crank Brothers Race Review, where myself will be with selected co-hosts who will break down each and every World Cup Dietrich race. Holy moly, what a race it was. Val Di Sole does always deliver. Now, Crank Brothers is synonymous with downhill racing. Last year, celebrating 13 years in a row with that Elite Champs win on that Mallet DH pedal. They did it in the female and the male categories with Charlie Hatton and Val Di Sole. Now, they've been adding to that offering. They've got a host of podium contenders and race winners like Ronan Dunn, Lucas Shaw, Cammy Belange, Troy Brosnan. The names go on in their shoes. So make sure you go and check those shoes out. I love them. And I'm excited, guys. I've got, which maybe someone be a bit surprised because he hasn't been on a race review podcast, but Eric, the legend Carter, he's in the house, the old dog, learning new tricks. I always loved picking apart races when I was racing as his teammate. And I know Win Masters knows him as well. We've got Win Masters back in the house. He loves jumping on. He does his Win TV after the race. Holy cow, what a race. I don't even know where to start, but EC, since you're new to the review show, let's go over to you. What can you tell me?
Well, I was blown away, Needles. It was, Black Snake is legendary, and then obviously to have the conditions that they had and that they had to manage those conditions all week, it was just amazing to watch the riders adapt, and conditions were changing through the finals run. So to watch that all transpire was unbelievable, man. It was I'm a big fan of it, but I can't believe those guys were able to ride at the level they were on a course that was that nasty.
Yeah, that sums it up. I've got notes on the course is always a topic of this race. It's always changing. I would say I think it's safe to say that's the gnarliest conditions we've seen them race in. I know in the past it's rained. There's always been the showers, but because it was either dry when we got there, when the riders got there, or it was so hot that it would dry out quickly. I mean, I remember Justin Leov and myself stopping riding because it was so treacherous, and we looked at the weather forecast. We knew the next day was going to be sunny, so we didn't even bother going up for practice. I think we did 3 runs the one day because we just knew what a waste of time and how risky. So Win, would you agree? Like, talk a bit about the conditions. You rode the track. You can tell us more than we can from sitting at home.
Yeah, it's the first time ever at Val Di Sole that we had an all-wet practice session as well. So normally you'd just have like one wet qualifier or wet one wet day, but it dry out real fast, and it was pretty cold, so it never really completely dried out. It was always slick, and there was heaps of dew every morning, so it'll just get slippery again. And that first wet practice day was pretty treacherous, and the track from the track walk to that, like the afternoon session on the first day, was a completely different track. Like when we walked it on the track, we were like, oh, this looks like a pretty easy and like nice Val Di Sole. They'd put quite a lot of gravel down. They'd done quite a lot of work, and they'd filled a lot of holes. So it was looking like, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun, like to ride. And then it was just like everything was gone within half of the first day. All the work they did was gone. So yeah, it was a proper World Cup downhill, European World Cup downhill.
Yeah, I would say EC, I think from our vantage point, it didn't look like they had done much to the track because we got to watch the tail end of a destroyed track. The track always gets bloody destroyed out there. And I mean, there's a few tracks that are fun to ride. I would say that one in Fort William, not so fun to go do laps on.
I don't know when you can, it's awesome to have your vantage point on this because you literally boots on the ground there riding the course. Watching the telecast, for me, it looked like it got the most slick about middle way through the finals when like Pinkerton's run. It looked like it was maybe the most slick, and it actually dried from his run on towards the end. It looked like it may have started drying towards the end of that. I don't know if that was the case. So, go ahead.
Yeah, it's probably was. It was coming in. Cloud was fully, like, some people were coming down like full fog, like you could hardly see them in the Stargate. So the clouds were just rolling through, and they're quite wet. So up at the top, it was like slight drizzle almost, but it was just from the clouds. and then that was just coming and going from about halfway through. And then I think that really just messed with a lot of people's race runs. Like, as you both know, it's pretty hard to line up if you don't know how wet it's going to be, and then you consider the whole track's going to be wet, and but it's only the top section that's wet. So yeah,
right. And it's well, yeah, right. You drop in on a course like that, and as you guys know, when you get your first couple of corners in, that's your feeler corners, right? It's like, I'm going to get these first couple corners in. This is going to give me a sense of what the course is going to be like. And yeah, I mean, and it looked like, depending on which line you took in the very first corners, like if you went inside on turn 1 and 2, you were literally riding through puddles. There was stuff splashing, right? So that perception that you have, I'm sure, would set you off thinking, oh my gosh, this course is going to be completely slick all the way down. But it looked to me like the guys at the end of the finals, the later guys, were really starting to, maybe they were getting feedback from the bottom that, like, hey, you can let it go in the middle because, it is drier than you think it's going to be. But man, those guys really seemed to, like, it just seemed less greasy for them, where their wheels were not skating quite as much.
Yeah, when I would say this is somewhere where you'd probably want a little bit more input. And Amaury talked about getting input, but some of it wasn't what he wanted or accurate, And I think Iles said a perfect thing. You often when you're not quite sure of the conditions, you get a bit of a gauge. Now, if you've got fog, that's not going to inspire confidence if you can barely see the second turn from the start gate. And what the fog brings, it's not just visibility. It's like a little bit of that moisture on your goggles, a little bit worse view, and then just a little bit of that moisture on a route. I mean, that's just horrendous. So what those guys were able to do, I'm not going to dig too much into, like, there was definitely varying conditions, and I'm not going to take away from any rider each way. Like, I don't have an opinion on that. But I will say it just adds to how damn impressive it was for every man and woman to get down that hill, because you could see how inconsistent it was. You could see that was the line they were committed to, and it could have been a 50-50 if they were going to make it through. But the level of commitment I saw was so impressive.
Yeah, I think that you could really, to me, it looked like maybe some of the riders had different tires on as well, because some of the riders, and I wasn't there, but it seemed like some people were on bikes where, like, they had zero traction. They were hitting like tree roots and stuff, and it was just the bike was just deflecting constantly with no grip, where maybe they were on like an intermediate, or even I don't think they were on full muds, but it looked like maybe, how those intermediate muds, sometimes they deflect. Maybe tire pressure wasn't spot on to accommodate it, but it was really crazy for me to see the variance of the way the bike setups were affecting the grip, and then obviously the confidence, right? Because, like, you guys know, when you get into that many tree roots and that many wet rocks, if you don't have that tire grip, I mean, it's settings and all that stuff, but ultimately that tire grip, if that's not grabbing for you, and every little thing that you hit, the bars are doing that deal on you, you instantly drag and brake the whole way down, right? And so you can't drag brake there the whole way down, because then you start to pump. I mean, it's this compounding thing, and you could see it in some of the riders' runs that had that happening and the ones that weren't. And it was really apparent. The first turns, obviously those are smooth, but as soon as they crested over into the sector 1, sector 2, where that switched over to sector 2, you could instantly see the people that were like, shit, this thing is not handling the way I want it to handle, and I still got minutes to deal with this. And you could just see them, like, the whole body would tense up and kind of get back in the back, and just like, gosh, I don't even want to be here right now. So I found it fascinating to see how the little setups played such a big difference on the overall run to the riders. At least that was my perception.
Yeah, what do you make of it? What stood out for you? And when he was mentioning setup and being comfortable, I mean, the thing that came to mind was Loic, and he mentioned, I don't think he was that comfortable in the conditions. He can't get that bike set up optimally on a track like that anyway. So it was damage control for him, and he kind of knew it. He said it's a championship ride, not a race-winning ride. But what stood out for you? What are some notables? And you were talking to a lot of the riders, so you'd give us some nice inside scoops.
Well, I think a lot of it came down to probably the mindset of the rider as well. Going into the start gate, like even if it was foggy and cloudy and wet, or like wetter than they expected, probably about the first rider that really made sense of it was Ocean O'Callaghan. And he was like fairway towards the end, but before that, there was like probably 10 or 15 odd riders that just struggled to do anything with it. And I think a lot of that, maybe they slid in those first corners and then they lost the confidence. If you've got any slight lack of confidence, you're not going to ride the Black Snake very well. And then you could see, even watching quite often, a lot of the guys were locking up their back wheel quite often. And then from Ocean to Troy, they started to make sense of it. And like Troy just floated. I don't know how he did it, but he was still in pretty wet conditions and he just floated the whole way down. And his braking was like so on point. He just wasn't braking on the roots and he was floating over the roots. He said even sometimes he was way offline, but he just made it work. And I think that sort of mindset and confidence to be able to ride in those conditions is like makes the biggest difference. I think, yeah, you can do what you want with your bike setup, but at the end of the day, that track you need a lot of confidence to ride it well. And then they actually changed some sections where I don't know if you saw that real hairpin gnarly enduro corner that everyone was talking about pretty much all week. And that made it so much harder than the straight line that was through the rocks before. So they tried to slow the track down, but it actually made it way harder. And it's like, I have full respect for any of the girls that rode that section, because like even as a guy riding it at the speed, it was hard to go over that crest and into that next section. So like you needed speed, but you had to do that slow corner first. And it was just so technical. Like it was something else, like not often you're just trying to survive your practice runs, but that was a World Cup where you were, No, we haven't had something like that for a long time.
No, we haven't. I mean, even your brother decided to sit it out. He's got other focuses this year, and that just shows you how gnarly the track is in those conditions. And I think you said an interesting thing there, like people that were good with their braking, people that sort of methodical. I've got composed in half a dozen riders here, and they were the riders that did well. They were the riders that did well. Even Amaury Pierron was composed. Yes, you hear Amaury Pierron winning a race by almost 5 seconds. Composed doesn't come to mind quite like you would with someone like Loic Bruni, but Troy was composed. The Dak was the first one to be like, wow, that is so methodical. It looked like he hit most of his marks, looked like he was really early on the braking. It looked like he was not trying much, and then it just showed in the times. So in those conditions, you could easily override, and like EC says, like if you slip once, that maybe breaks your confidence, and there's no let up there. So like a mistake on a route section compounds for 200 foot there, especially if you get unclipped or something like that. In other tracks, it's like 3 turns. You're like, okay, I messed 3 turns up. I'm clipped back in. I know I can attack this section harder than I kind of have comfortable to do. But there, I mean, I think the knock-on effect is so huge. And that's why we see the time gaps we do. If you get it right, and you have the skill, and you have the composure, and you're fit, you can literally smoke the field. We've seen it before with Aaron Gwynn, did it in the dry. Sam Hill back in the day was up at the split, and now we saw it again.
Yeah, those current like when, like you were saying, it's really key. You could see the guys and girls that were really making sense of it. They were on those crest overs, because that course has a lot of real steep pitches, and then it leads to long flats, right? And so and some of those crest overs, they're not blind per se, but they are like, they are really defined crest overs. And the riders that were dragging brake a little bit over those and really like hesitating at the top to like make sure, like, oh, I'm going to make sure I know where I'm going before I go in, versus the ones that were like, I know where I'm going, I have confidence. That was leading to exit speed that, like you were saying, Andrew, it just compounded, right? So you could see, like, when Dak's run came down, if Amaury's not there, Dak's run is an amazing winning run, right? Like if a miracle run like Amaury doesn't get pulled off, Dak, that run wins 9 out of 10 times. I mean, it was just perfect flow, great outside lines. He was really smart about his line choices. His bike setup was one of the best, like the way his wheels were tracking, and there was minimal feedback in his hands and his feet, right? So he had even line with hands and feet, but the wheels were tracking underneath him. That was the thing I noticed right away with Dak. It was just like, oh my gosh, his hands are so quiet. He's able to control the bike. So that's confidence inspiring, but his lines and smooth, no hesitation. He might not have been the fastest guy into any given section, but he never slowed down. So he never had that little like hesitation, that little hang up. He never had to stand up in a corner. It was just this constant top to bottom, consistent building, runaway truck that just kept going and going and going and going. And you could see his body as the run got going, that he was like, he knew, oh, this is great. And you guys know how those runs are. When you have those runs, man, it's magic. Like you're on a magic carpet, just cruising down the run, man. And you're like, you get to the bottom of those runs and you always think, man, I could have gone so much faster, but it was a really, really fantastic run by Dak. And I think that was a huge confidence boost despite Amaury beating those guys by so much. I hope Dak can come out of this and go, okay, I got beat by a large margin, but I'm still like, that was an amazing run by myself, and I'm going to use this to build into the season. So I loved his run, was fantastic, man. And I honestly, when I was watching it with my kid, I was like, oh, it's over. Like there's nobody's touching that. That's just was so smooth and so precise. I thought it was already a given. So
yeah, Win, didn't you say in your video you went off to the media room until about Troy's run? And I would say Troy's come up in the pre-show, and we all know he's consistent. EC's been a team manager with him. We all know he's got the speed. We all know he's just so incredible. But he has shown all-out aggression this year. We were going, question mark, is Troy going to lay caution to the wind and put that extra bit of aggression in? And him and Luke have been doing that. And Troy's run, for him to know that he's making mistakes, run different lines, run wide. And he normally is this methodical, perfect rider, just every backside. He knows exactly where he's going to put each wheel. And then you see the aggression out of him. I just wrote down aggression with Troy. I was like, that was impressive. I love seeing Troy being willing to be aggressive, even in those conditions. And that was when I think we all realized, and when probably everyone on the ground there probably realized, holy shit, we've got a race on our hands. Dak might not be in the hot seat all the way through.
Yeah, I think all of the crowd had probably given up on the race, just because so many people were red at every split. So it's like, it was just a bit of a letdown at that point, and you're like, well, nothing's really going to happen. Like, how's anyone going to pull something out when all of these guys couldn't do it? And then Troy just made sense of it, and even though he says he was offline and stuff, he still made it look dialed, like he was still getting backsides even if he was offline, and he was still floating over the routes. So it's like, it was an impressive ride. And then Dak's run prior was just like something else. It was like reminiscent of a Josh Bryceland race run where he looks like he's cruising. Like, he didn't look like he was trying. And then he hardly pedaled as well. So, like, he just kept his speed. He stays at the one speed and he rides the whole track like that. And then those high handlebars set up, it works on Val Di Sole. Like, if any track, that's got to be the track for it. He's just sitting on the back and just cruising down. Like, it looked so chill, but it was so dialed.
It did look chill. It doesn't do it justice what he's able to do. And you on the ground there, I've been there, EC's been there. We're very happy to be on our couch, but it doesn't do it justice, because someone like Loic Bruni, some of the pedal strokes I saw him take were not race run pedal strokes, I don't think. I think they were a little bit like fighting back to speed, or okay, I overbrake that turn, or I made a mistake there. So for Dak to just float his way down, and I thought, we're not going to get huge into the juniors, but I thought Max's run to me was a little similar. Nice and composed, flowy. So that was cool. We'll get too off topic. Maybe we'll stay in the elites. So that was really cool to see.
With Troy, I think for when I was watching Troy's run, and I agree with what you're saying, Andrew, because, I got a year with Troy. It was fantastic. When I was managing the specialized team, it was a long time ago, but that was the one thing that we were always trying to get Troy to do was like, he's one of the most consistent guys in the history of our sport. How many podiums he's had, how many world's podiums he's had. Now he's an older guy now with a lot of wisdom and a lot of smarts, right? And he's been down this course a bunch of times. So it was really good to see him get that aggression. And I think Fabian has really like probably talked him into like, damn it, trust yourself. Like, don't drag your brakes in a few spots because you think you're on a good run and you don't want to mess it up. Let go because you're on a good run, because now you had a shot to win this thing. So it was great to see that. But I think Troy's setup, what I saw is there was a couple spots where he was floating good. But if you go back and watch the footage, and maybe it was because he was getting offline a bit, but it seemed like on some of the routes and some of the rocks that his hands were less quiet. So I don't know if they had it a little too stiff or the rebound was too fast, but it seemed like he was getting a lot of feedback under the tires. Whereas Dak's run or Amaury's run, the bike was so settled. It was insanely settled. And there was a few spots on Troy's run, especially as he got lower into the race. So I don't know if the suspension heated up a little bit, the oil was working better or something. I don't know. Or maybe he got better on lines, but the bike seemed to quiet down as he got to the bottom a little bit. But sector 2, when he crested over it, and where the sector 1, sector 2, there's that inside line, or you can go all the way around the outside. That's when the bike, what I noticed with Troy's bike is it was really like jittery on the top of everything. And where Dak's bike was on top of everything, but the wheels had a little bit more compliance. And so for Troy to be able to ride aggressive, I don't think Troy likes to ride really. He doesn't like to get out of his comfort zone, especially when the bike isn't settled. So for him to go as fast as he did when it looked like sector 2, maybe even a little into sector 3, his bike was unsettled, is telling of like, dude, he's hungry, man. He's not content with the seconds and thirds. He's wanting more. And I think that's a testament to being under a guy like Fabian, who strives for the highest level and is such a tactician. So I think if he can come out of this with confidence, and he should come out of it with confidence because he had a great run, he can build into the season and really, maybe be up there and take a win or two.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I think before we go and drop Hail Mary on the run of an era here, Finn Iles, I thought would be really good here. But after Leogang, the injury, you go, shucks, okay, so he sort of rode on adrenaline there. The less is more, and was this impressive run. What is he going to be able to do at Val Di Sole, the Black Snake? Like, when was he nursing this injury still? Like, that's an impressive feat to get down there. Yes, the confidence after Leogangs probably overrides any issue with an injury.
Yeah, I actually missed Finn in my post-race interviews. We got Loic and we missed Finn.
Ironically.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, make it up.
No, I was in the lift with him on the qualifying day, and he said in the time training he had won every split, so he was confident. Like, he hadn't done a full run, but he was fastest every sector in time training. So he had probably, I don't know if he wanted to do a full run or not, but he'd shown his pace in the time training, so he was pretty happy and confident. And he also had a crash at Val Di Sole and had a injury on his pinky, so he wasn't sure if he had a fracture in his pinky as well. So I don't know, he seems to ride better injured, because you probably line up with that clear head and you're just like, well, I'll do what I can. And it seems to be working. Like, whatever he's doing is working really well right now. And it's good to see. I hope that he can take it to Loic at one of these next ones to put the dynamic out a little bit and put the pressure on Loic. But so far, with these couple of little injuries, he's been really doing something special.
Yeah, East, you've ridden injured and probably had some good races. I know you nursed that back for a while. Does it take I feel like sometimes it takes the pressure off because you're kind of just managing your body, going through the process, and maybe not expecting to win, or you are maybe, but I sometimes say, beware the injured rider, and that's, I think, what Finn's able to do here. And he's extremely skillful. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the best riders in the world. That certainly helps.
Right. Well, for when it comes to injuries and stuff, for lack of a better way to describe it, you have a built-in excuse, right? So if you're nursing an injury and you have a bad run, you can always chalk that up. And let's be honest, all of us that have ever achieved or tried or even raced at this level, we're ego driven, right? And so our ego hurts when we're not injured, when we have a good bike setup and we just get our ass kicked. That is hard to swallow, right? So if you're a top rider and you've got an injury that you're nursing, it's like, oh, okay, well, I got this thing, like, but and so that does relieve pressure. You are able to like just ride your bike down. I think with Finn, those guys, the work that team has done on their bikes, I mean, it's no secret. You can see how quiet those bikes have been. They're amazing. Loics was not this weekend. I don't know what happened there, but Finn's bike, like in the past, he's always had these, crazy over-aggressive runs, over-pushing, and then he just blows, like, you always feel like when a Finn run is getting ready to happen, it's like, okay, we're going to light a fuse at the top when he goes out of the start house, and it's a race to whether the fuse gets to the bomb or not. And sometimes he blows up, and sometimes he has this amazing run. It seems like even injured or not, it seems like he's having more consistent runs. He's actually finding that line that he can get over it a little bit, but he's not going way over it and causing these blowups. We didn't get to see what happened off screen. So obviously he had some type of a stand-up, some type of an offline thing because he was up, and then he lost a full second that he shouldn't have lost with the type of run he was having. So I would have loved to have seen that. But overall, I think the team atmosphere, those guys are firing on all cylinders. They got their bikes really dialed, and it's allowing Finn to ride he's still riding with that aggression, but we're not seeing those crazy blowups, right? They're little mistakes, but they're all having little mistakes. And I think all of that's gelling for him. A consistent Finn is a really dangerous guy for these guys. Like he is, Gwen said it on the, like, this dude can be a danger man here, and he's finding it. You can see him finding it. And like you said, Gwen, it's awesome to see, like, even injured, he's starting to get these, it's podium. It's not podium, crash. It's like boom, 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 boom. He's really coming into his own. So I love seeing it. He's an awesome guy to watch ride.
No, he is. And it's awesome that you bring him up, and you brought Troy up. And now we're going to speak about the man of the moment. We got a bit of an overall sort of title coming up here, because when you see Loic win back-to-back and dominate in Leogang, you think, is he going to run away with this? We don't have Amaury back. Quinn's not there. That's like a guy that always wants to go for the title. Like, give me the ball. I'll take the last shot. Like, he wants to be there. But I think you got a bunch of guys now, and Finn being one of them. Like, give me the ball on the buzzer. I'll take the final shot. These guys love the pressure. It's impressive. Now, speaking about pressure, speaking about hold my beer, speaking about comeback in our sport, to come back from a broken back and the darkest of spaces that guy was in, he has just, honestly, I don't even want to say on the field, but with all due respect, I think that was almost unexpected for Amaury to bounce back this quickly and in this sort of emphatic fashion. But could we expect anything less from the guy? So it's almost 5 seconds. It can happen on this track in those conditions. If you get things firing and you can hold on and your bike is working, like, I think their bike suits a track like this. Let's be honest. One of the heavier bikes on the circuit. They have ways to make it compliant. They've got a higher sort of pivot and an ideal wheel that they can change, like all those sort of things. But to see him, I think what happened in Leogang was a blessing for him. He overrode his race run and he knew it. So it's to me that he almost backed it down a notch. Go slow to go fast, hey, EC. So yeah, that's a little bit of it, but you guys maybe riff on that. EC, go for it and then win. Like that was just one for the ages.
Yeah, I mean, when you want to go, you want me to go first, Andrew? I'll go first. Dude, I mean, gosh, like the way he came out of the gate, right? Like he came out of the gate super, super good, and it was just amazing to watch. How he hit his first couple of corners, right? Like that set the tone for his run. What I noticed in the first couple of corners is he had really good lines. He had a good gear selection when it accelerated after the first two corners before the little drop down. But his bike then there's three kind of big swooping corners, and he had really good lines on those, but his bike was really, really neutral. And so when I say neutral, like he would set it on edge and it would track really smooth, nice radius arcs where there wasn't under or oversteer. It was just tracking these perfect smooth arcs. And so the second corner, the second right-hander, he came off of that. He got a really good line. He got off of that berm early, got a good line into that step down thing into the left. And then when it drops down into that bowl and there's that high speed right, you can actually see he gets really wide on that and gets a really good exit on that. And I'm like, oh shit, here we go. Like the flow is in. And then it was like, okay, what's going to happen when he crests over into the first bits of that stuff? He had amazing line choice. He really, really picked that course apart to like in a way that nobody else did. His bike was tracking on a whole different level. Their setup, he was loading into stuff. He was jumping into stuff. Other riders weren't jumping into the things that he was jumping into. So that told me he had supreme confidence in what he was hitting and how he was hitting it. And he knew that his bike was going to stay underneath him and not skate. And so what you saw was a lot of riders were riding over the stuff because it was like, you know, when you're riding over roots, you have the ability to steer the bike. When you're jumping into things like that, there's always that little question mark of if I put it in the wrong spot, things aren't going to happen good. But I think he was loading and jumping over things. So it almost unlocked a whole different course for him. Similar to when you see like Jet Lawrence ride moto, how it's a whole different, he's hitting completely different bumps than everybody else. And I mean, it was building his exit speed. He had one sketchy spot that he kind of ping-ponged through a little bit. But it also seemed like he was riding on a drier part of the course, right? Like if you're on the course that everybody's been riding on the whole day, that's bringing the moisture up. And if you're bouncing over some of those spots, you're landing in drier spots. You're on the drier part of the course. And dude, 4.8 seconds, 8.2 seconds to fifth place. What the hell, dude? Like that doesn't happen in the modern age. Like the equipment has been so refined. The riders are the most amazing athletes. You know, it's just gotten more and more F1. Our sport has just gotten more and more refined. To see something like that reminded me of the way Nico would just kick our ass. Like he would just pick the course apart and he would be, you know, we would all be standing down at the bottom watching him race and all the riders would just be like, oh my gosh, like how did he find that? How did he do that? Right. And I think the telling thing for me about his run with the field was when they panned over at the end of the race and you saw Finn's face, that split second of Finn's face of like, that was what the hell do I have to do? Like, that is impossible. Like in Finn's face showed that's impossible. And like you said, now when you give us the intel on it, like he was fastest in every sector, Finn probably thought like, dude, I'm winning this thing. And I mean, nobody was touching that run. That's a run for the ages, man. Like it was really, really amazing. So And you just add to that the comeback, the story of the adversity that he's faced multiple times, man. That guy's been busted up, like not a broken arm or a broken collarbone. It's like multiple injury, helicopter flight out. Like those are the type of runs that change people's, I don't want to do this anymore. And he's had it multiple times, dude. And he's still able to do this. What the hell, dude? What do they got in the water in France, man? Crazy shit, dude.
No, crazy shit. He loves it, man. He lives for winning. He loves it, win. So speaking of winning, take us through that win. Like tough to add to that. EC's nailed it. It's just amazing. But you're on site, so you're feeling the energy at that finish line. You're speaking to these riders where Loic's like, sorry, what did he win by? 4. And you're like, no, it's basically 5 because it was 4.8. Yeah. And Troy, everyone's like, oh, it's so awesome to see Amaury back. Yeah, it is for us at home. I don't know about for you guys.
Well, he already had another sort of challenge with his brother having a big crash the day before as well and getting taken off in a helicopter, I think, as well. So his brother broke his pelvis into pieces. So that probably wouldn't, for me, that wouldn't help the cause, but he said that motivated him. So I'm not really sure how you can get motivated from something like that, but this guy is built different. Like, he lives and breathes winning downhill races. Like, and the road to get back to this has been like anything but easy. He said he had doubts that he might not even get another podium again. So just to see what he's got back to is unreal. And then to put on a clinic like that where the whole hot seat has just look on their face, they can't believe what's happening. Like Dak was like, oh, any other day but today could have Amaury done his comeback. Like, and I was like, well, yeah, your run was amazing, but then whatever he did, I don't know. Like, it was something else. So it's just like, that is Amaury to a T, you know? Like, the other run that kind of reminds me of that sort of style was the one he did in Leger when you watched the GoPro. Like, when he won a Leger and you watched the GoPro back, it was just ridiculous. And when you rode the track, you couldn't believe the speed he was riding every section. He hardly braked, like, at that Leger run. And then in this run, I watched some of his GoPro. I just saw it on Instagram. When he entered the top first bit of the woods, where a lot of the guys were going wide around, like Finn went wide around. Amaury went inside across all the routes, and he got all the little hops, but like hardly slowed down. He can't brake much at all. To do that committed is like something else, especially when you know that it could be slick, you know? Like, if you've been at the top, you've done your warm-up, it's cloudy outside, you know it's going to be slick on those routes. So to come in that committed is like, that's just Amaury Pierron to a T. Like, the whole thing.
Yeah, it was, man. I mean, he had that mist sort of cleared at the top when Amaury came down, and he earned that, right? He was fastest in semi. But it was almost like the universe. The sun came out for him. The vision was there, but the track wasn't going to be any better than 10 minutes before that when there was a bit of that. But, man, you hit it on nail on the head, because EC said earlier, like, if Amaury wasn't there, Dak's run, you'd be like, oh my goodness, he was so composed, it was amazing. You know, it barely looked like he trying. What an awesome World Cup win, right? And then Amaury comes down and you like almost can't speak about any of the other runs. And, you know, we have to look back at Aaron Gwyn, and this is the track that he did it. It was 7 or 8 seconds. I looked it up on Roots and Rain. But it's years ago now. It's over 10 years ago. Let me look it up while we're speaking, because Aaron Gwyn in, what year is this? 2012. So it's 12 years ago. He beat Greg Menard by 8 seconds.
And I think this is the next biggest margin since then.
It is. No, at 100%.
This is insane, like that.
And as EC said, the level, there's way more depth. There's way more guys that can podium. There's way more guys that can win. There's way more guys that believe they can win. You got Dak. He can win. He really deserves a win by now. So you got all that depth. You got the bike technology. You got all that. But the reason so people might say, okay, cool. But how does that happen? Why does it happen? Well, when you've got a rider that is as good as he is with a bike setup, as committed, but you've got length of track, so you've got a 3-minute 40 track or whatever it is, so you can put a little bit more gap than you can at Leogang. You've got the weather. The weather plays a huge role. And then more riders are going to make a little bit of mistakes, and on that track, it just doesn't let up. There's no easy section where it doesn't matter if you're 30th in the world or first in the world, you within half a second. We see that at a lot of World Cup tracks, not this track. So there's all those reasons that you can have a time gap like that. Doesn't make it any easier to do that. I'm as blown away as ever. And like you said, you got people at the bottom just scratching their heads. It was like the great Nicolas Villiers, like Sam Hill, or like Gwynne. You're like, how the... And I'm going to swear. Like, how
they couldn't believe
am I meant to compete with that? Now, luckily, each week is not Val Di Sole, and I promise you we get to Leger, and if the conditions are somewhat normal, times will be tight again. But, man, what a cool story for us to talk about.
Yeah, he was Troy had a very good top as well, right? Like he had a very similar start that Amaury had. Like he got wide in the bowl, where they kind of dip out of sight and then rip across the screen. First couple of corners, good gear choice, good, nice smooth lines, but they both took the inside line that you were talking about when through the straight line through the woods. And it's a marked difference. You go back and watch and you can see how Amaury's bike was just like, he was getting the hops, like you said. He got them right. He got the frequency right. So he was lily padding into the safe spots and not hitting any of the roots. Not that there was any safe spots really on that shit, but that set the tone for him. His first mistake, or his first bobble that I saw, was like sector 4, right? And so Troy's first little like, oh man, was right there, right? And so now Troy's mindset is, I'm 45 seconds into the race and I've just felt my first uneasy feeling. That sets the tone for the rest of the course, man. And I think Dak and Amaury had very similar runs. Their bikes looked the same. I think what you saw from Amaury versus Dak is a guy that has won and knows what a winning run is, and like knows that he can let off a little more and he can get a little bit more out of that run, and it compounded all the way down because they both of their bikes were the only 2 bikes that I saw that looked the way they looked down the course. But Amaury, with so much experience in winning so many races, like maybe he trusted it a little bit more and was letting off a little more, because when he would crest down, like he would drop down into those flats and bridge across a couple hundred feet, the exit speed that he had onto those things was amazing. And he was jumping stuff like he was almost like dirt jumping. It was crazy to see like how animated he could be with the bike. And he was just jumping over all the danger stuff and just landing. So the whole time his bike was just settled, and holy shit, dude.
Yeah, holy shit. Look, and Dak did mention, maybe with the conditions and his strategy going in, it wasn't an all-out race run affair for him. So
yeah,
but he also mentioned maybe he could have got 2 seconds more out of the run, not 5.
Yeah,
he said that, not me.
Yeah,
he said that. And how often do we get a perfect run? You see, that these guys analyze the splits and they do all the smart stuff, Excel spreadsheets and that we both, you and I, try avoid like the plague. He had a perfect run. He won all the sectors.
He did.
Drop the mic. That's it. We could go on for a whole podcast on him, and he deserves it. It's cool. He's back. This is going to be great for conference, good for the title. Just so cool.
But you know what, Andrew, you mentioned this earlier about Amaury, is like, normally we associate, and you would think if you didn't watch the telecast, right, and you said he won by 5 seconds, you would think, oh my gosh, this is going to be the most wild, crazy run you've ever seen in your mind. Like,
let me put the run on right now. I got to watch what happened. That's crazy.
Yeah, shit is flying all over the place. I mean, they don't run course tape anymore, but it's like, there's got to be course tape flying all over the place, right? And it's like, dude, it was not that. It was the complete opposite of that, right? It was as you said, it was composed. It was smart setups, setting up
He was
wide
so
for stuff.
He was so patient, right?
Oh,
Like when he needed to be
dude,
wide, he was extra wide, and
that's
then
right.
when he needed to cut the course, like Quinn does and he was really good at it, Val Di Sole. He's like, how do I get from here to those few corners as straight as possible? He
Yeah.
would do that very well as well. He just had it all.
Go back and watch Amaury's run. And I've watched the race probably like 3 times, right? Because you know how I am, Andrew. I'm always I'm so analytical about shit. Amaury's run is one big giant turn from top to bottom, right? Like, because he was carrying so much speed, he was, he would come out of one corner and he would just stay on it and arc out to the next outside for the next corner, right? Where a lot of guys were trying to run short lines through stuff. And so they would come out of the corner, have a little hesitation, and then they were straight lining into the, to the next inside. Go back and look at Amaury's run. I encourage anybody who's listening, and you'll see it's this big, well, it's ironic, right, that they call it the black snake, because it's just like this big snaking run all the way down, and it's just smooth arcing corners, man. It was like, I noticed it this morning. I watched rewatched his run this morning, and I was like, dude, he's like on this GS, like giant slalom ski run all the way down, and he could do that because his wheels never got upset. So he was just edge, transfer over, edge, nice and smooth. It was, dude, it must have been an amazing, like, imagine being in his head halfway down that run and knowing, like, you guys have all been on really good runs, and you're like, every corner you go through when you're on a run like that, you're like, holy shit. Oh my gosh. Like, oh my gosh, man. Here it just keeps going. You're like, oh yeah. Like, he's so stoked inside because he knows what he has going from top to bottom. And what an amazing feeling. I'm so happy to see that guy. We're better for it because now we got, like you said, like, dude, he's in the hunt, man. Like, it's gonna get real. Like, when I was managing the Specialized team, I thought we had it wrapped up. Aaron and Troy were 1 and 2 in points, and then log comes this Bryceland cat who does these cruiser runs down the hill, man. It just starts ticking off wins, dude, and he blew by us like we were sitting on jack stands, dude. He just smoked us in the points, and there was nothing we could do about it. We couldn't catch him, and what I saw from Amaury, he could have the ability. I mean, he can go on a run right now. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be great to see. I hope Loic can put this one aside. I think he's savvy enough. I think he's experienced enough. Obviously, he's won enough races. Hopefully he can just go, I actually had a fantastic day because my bike was not tracking. I wasn't riding to my best. I still pulled a 5th. On my worst day, if I can pull a 5th, I'm going to be in the points hunt at the end. But some of these guys, I would encourage these guys to go back home to their local downhill trail that they feel good on, that they know the lines on, and do some runs on that, because this knocks your confidence down, right? When you go to a place and you ride like this, and these are the best guys in the world, man. And a lot of these guys struggle because the course is so gnarly. So I would say, go ride your local course, get comfortable, start to build that confidence back up, because you're probably not going to see anything this gnarly the rest of the year. And it's going to go back to, we'll call it normal.
Yeah, well said. Well, there are definitely some notables, but I think it's a great time to move over to another Cinderella story. Tani, back on top. And she had a different approach. She knew her arms were going to fall off. She knew she was going to get arm pump. And even Aaron Good at the booth was talking about arm pump. I was like, what are you talking about? I used to get arm pump down there. You used to smoke me by 10 seconds. Like, what do you mean you also had arm pump? But this is awesome. She has had really an emotional roller coaster to get back here. And she said, I'm going to go as hard as I can because I'm getting arm pump anyway, and then survive at the bottom. And it showed in the splits. She smoked the first 2 splits, and then it was damn out survival mode. So that's really cool. On her birthday, when you bring us in, because you chatted to her, you got her, she was pretty tipsy. So she opened up a lot, not really into protection, bummed that she had to use protection to get in the finals, but I guess other ladies were doing it. And then she said she better make the most of it. And damn, she did.
Yeah, she was almost embarrassed to use the protection status. So it was kind of cool to hear that from someone at that level, because you don't often hear that side of things. Normally, it all seems like they're enjoying the protection status rather than feeling bad for using it. So she said she felt bad for using it, and the day before was terrible, like an absolute disaster. So it was just turn a new page and go for it on race day, and clearly whatever she did, it's paid off, because I guess waking up on your birthday, it's normally a better day than the previous day if you had a shit day. So that should start things off on a better note. But then to go up and do practice runs of that track in the wet conditions is pretty hard to build confidence. That takes a couple of runs to really feel it. Like you can't go up there and just do a cruisy first run like on your race day morning. That doesn't ever work in those conditions. So I don't know. I think she probably built into that pretty well from the practice, and then just laid it down. And it was a really smart ride. Like, you had to be a racer for a long time to know how to race like that, like to race to your strengths. And she rode all the top part like flat out, had a 5-second lead at one point, and then just made it down the bottom and came in with a 1-second lead. So like, it's pretty impressive to be able to play to your strengths so well. Like that's exactly what she's done.
Yeah, I agree, Win. I think, that it was and I don't know if that was a strategy that she devised on her own, or if she was working with Fabian with that. Obviously he's such a wise racer, right? And so there's a wealth of knowledge that comes with being associated with him and being under that tent. But yeah, I mean, play to your strengths on that, especially on that course. And she executed her game plan, right, to perfection, right? It was exactly what she was hoping for, and it paid dividends for her. So going through the things that she's gone through, man, and to see a rider of her caliber get back to that level again. I mean, it's, for the men's and women's, both races, we got to see these two Cinderella stories. So, I mean, what an amazing time to be a fan of the sport and to watch that happen. I'm just hoping she keeps building on this, right? Like, I mean, she should. We're getting into, I mean, all courses are hard, but obviously it's like, this is the pinnacle for the season of like, man, I just want this weekend to be over. Race course. That's what I see. Courses like that are like, I just, you start getting to the point where you're like, I just want to get out of here. Lucas Shaw said that, it was like, I'm just glad I got out of here with some points and I didn't get busted up, and I'm on to the next one. And it's like, what a gnarly thing for the fastest, most talented gravity bicycle riders in the world to have that mindset of like, I just want to get out of here.
Ronan Dunn told Win, I think he told you, Win, that he lied on his Instagram. I mean, Ronan Dunn, he wins hard lines. He's the new gnarly Amaury Pierron, right? He's like, I lied on my Instagram. I actually don't love this track. I effing hate it. I crashed so many times. Luckily, I didn't get hurt. And I got 6th place. Like, it's cool. Let's go. So him and Ocean O'Callaghan, like, they just naturally can get down a track like that, even on shitty days, hating it. So that's cool. But Tani, I think it's awesome, man. She's great for the sport. Like, she's got this huge fan base. She's inspiration to the young girls, to the ladies, and to the men. Just so cool to see. But the podium and the ladies had smaller time gaps than the men. Not just the Amaury thing, like the rest. They were amazing. That was a race. So Marine Cabarrou, she's just back to her old tricks. She can win races. She can be on the podium on like a consistent day. So that was really awesome to see, because the rest of the Scott team, shame. I had them, obviously I'm biased, but I thought they got a really good roster this year, and just luck's against them. Form, luck, flat tires, but Marine is holding it down, and she's also had adversity. So now just to see, okay, maybe not my best day, or it was a pretty smooth run, or I almost won, or I should have won. boom, that's good for points, you know.
I thought I thought her run was, I didn't see anything like spectacular, but I also didn't see anything where there was a detractor. It looked just like this. I don't want to say vanilla run. You can't have a vanilla run at this course.
So maybe smart.
Crazy.
Maybe a smart
but
run.
It was very, yes, it was very smart and very, very clean. I thought she had a really good balance of aggression and patience. And so she didn't have any big, like, crazy bobbles, right? And she seemed like in control. She was able to keep pressing, like where Tani's run, you could see she started getting a little tired towards the end of the run, right? Where Marie was consistent all the way down. So I thought it was a great run. I think she's probably going to be able to come out of this go, heck yeah, like I'll take that run every day, you know?
Down the Black Snake. And what about Monica? I think that's quite a surprise for her. Not really for us. Like, we know how good she is technically. And she won some of the splits as well. I mean, this new format, she hasn't been in the final all the time. So for her to bounce back, I mean, that's equally impressive, winning some splits down the Black Snake.
Yeah, I think the track really is probably like Monica's track, like for plays to her strengths, because she's just quite a small rider and loves the technical steep stuff. A smaller rider doesn't need to brake as much, so it definitely plays in their favor a little bit on that track, because they don't need the all-out brake power everywhere, and they're not taking as big a hits if they can ride it smoothly. And I think that she really enjoys the challenge of Val Di Sole. So I think she's been on the podium there a few times, so she knows that's a strong track for her, and then she's delivered on the day as well. So it's pretty cool to see. Cami pulled out, so it's probably pretty good for Monica to deliver for the team as well. Should be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, definitely. And Tani hadn't won since 2021 July, so it's a long time. Just I forgot to add that. I mean, that's, man, the sport can really knock you down, and same as Miriam Nicole, she's been getting knocked down a lot, but she's also back on the podium. And someone like her, yes, normally she thrives there. It is a really good track for her, but I think with those conditions, just get out of there healthy. Get out of there healthy. Get to Morzine. Get some. I think half the pro field's going to be doing laps in Morzine and Leger. Just go get some laps in. Like EC says, go back to your home trail. Get refreshed. Come back swinging at Leger, which I'm sure she will. And that's probably what Vali needs. Like, Vali sort of had to manage. She was pretty ill, hey, Win. I mean, you would have spoken to her. So she was pretty ill. Yeah, she looked a little tight, I would say, compared to what I would have expected her to look like on a race run. I'm not trying to pick it apart to be nasty. It just seemed like where she crashed, it's a racing incident, as well as I'm not sure why she was trying to get over to the left. I think she was trying to get, and she just probably wasn't herself physically, you know. And if you're not strong and you're not preempting these little bumps, you're gonna be a bit off balance. And she just lost it in what you would hope is a routine section, but nothing's routine there. Just because you're kind of going in a straight line doesn't mean it's not slippery as hell.
Yeah, I think also to turn it around from like such a good victory 6 days before is pretty hard, because you're riding such a high. You have a good evening with all your team, and she was pretty tipsy after Leo gang, so probably she had a bit of a party after there, and then go straight to the next race. It's tiring to do that and then get straight back in that mindset. And then she got some sort of bug. I think everyone got some sort of bug. They're just going around the pits. So she ended up sick for Val Di Sole, which is probably the worst track to be sick at, because you need to be feeling every bit strong to attack that Black Snake. And you could see that. You could see it in her riding.
Yeah, EC, I mean, that it's mentally draining as well as physically. So you need energy. You need energy to be mentally strong. You need energy to be physically strong. And yeah, a quick turnaround is tough. Some of the riders might not have celebrated, but man, when you win at home and all your friends are there, I mean, whatever, I'm celebrating if I was able to do something as spectacular as that. But, you know, it just is a tough turnaround after a high like that. You're running on adrenaline. Your energy is, the media wants you. Everyone wants a piece. And then you got to turn yourself around and get down the black snake in the wet. I mean, I think she would have rather had a weekend off. I'm just saying. I would have.
Yeah. Well, especially being ill, right? A course like that, especially in their conditions, it was better for them. Yeah, you know, to be ill, it's so hard to will yourself to get out of bed, let alone go out when it's, you know, it's raining or drizzling. You know, your kit gets wet, so now you're like you're in, you know, damp clothes. You don't feel good, and it's hard. Like it's real. You know, that's the attrition part of the World Cup. You know, it's like it happens a lot. You know, riders do get little bugs. You do get things, and it's riding through that. So, I'm sure she's probably looking back on this run and saying, "I can't believe how I rode." But, you know, also, look, watching her bike, it reminded me of Loic's run, and it, like I said, I don't know if they had a different tire choice or something, or like it almost looked like her bike looked like if you like bead your tires up when you're setting them up and you forget to let the air pressure out and lower it back down. That's what her bike looked like to me. It looked like her wheels, like her tires, were just deflecting off of everything. And so I don't know if it was because she was losing focus because she was ill, because it is so hard to focus when you feel like shit. But she still got fifth, man. She got off the deck and still got a fifth, right? And so that's similar to Loic. I mean, it's crazy how the winning storyline is kind of the same, and the fifth place storyline is the same, which is points leaders come in, have horrible runs, still manage fifths on their worst day. Those are championship riders. Those are riders that are riding to a championship level that are saying, I'm gonna minimize, I'm gonna manage this damage. This is damage control, and we're gonna get some points. We're gonna get out of here, and we're gonna live to fight another day. So I hope she can look at it that way and just go, all right, like this one's behind us. Like, well, you know what? I know what I'm capable of. I've won a lot of races. Same with Loic. Behind us, we're looking forward. We're back out. We're going to refresh, retrack, get ready to get the second half of the season done, so we can start winning our races again.
Yeah, that's well said. I was actually looking up a little bit, like the storylines have been this wet race. In the last 10 years, if I've got my facts right, we haven't raced this early at Val Di Sole. It's always been July, August, or a season ender. So, yeah, maybe we don't want to go to Val. Maybe the riders need a petition. It's a Valley of the Sun, but only in July, not in June.
Yeah.
So, man, yeah, that's well said. Damage control, same for Loic. Comes out with a podium, same as Valley. She got up, she pushed hard. That was a brutal week to be ill and manage yourself down there. So, yeah, it's so impressive. I think there's some notables, and then I'll hand it over to you guys for like there's obviously the story of the race or notables, but the Irish, it's really impressive to see those guys in the top 10 again. And then I think we must not forget Dylan Maples to be sort of riding on a big team like that and being given the ride. Last year it was, I think, was the first year win, but you can correct me. That's a lot to step up into the shoes when Amaury's not around, Miriam's not around. You got this huge semi there. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, on the circuit. It's a lot of expectations and pressure. He's handled it very well, and the results are not always there, but the speed's been there. But that run, very impressive. You know, he rode similar to Amaury in a way. I thought it was smart, composed, wasn't too loose. Bike clearly works good.
Yeah, those guys, Commensal had an amazing weekend, right? Like they had just some amazing results all the way across the board. And I guess I haven't been on the scene to know the super detailed technical aspects, but you spoke on it, Andrew, about how much different settings they can do with their bike, how many variables they can change to get the setup the way they want. And dude, I think they really they nailed it, right? Like Dylan's run was fantastic. Like he rode really, really good, man. And that whole Commencal team, I don't know if they share notes across with each other of like where their setup is, tire pressure, tire suspension settings or whatever, but they all seem to be like really, really hauling. So yeah, it was great to see Dylan have a great ride. And, being on a big team like that, getting that opportunity, it can go two ways, man. It hardly ever goes down the middle. It goes really good or really bad. And he seems to be making the most of it. So I love seeing a kid, especially, from the States, make his way and make it happen and working on that opportunity to further himself.
Yeah, well said. And maybe sometimes we're not always giving honorable mention for a 10th, but someone like Danny Hart coming into the season with less time on a new bike. And I think maybe you could speak to, I think he's swapped sizes as well. I did think the bike looked a little long for him. He looked stable, but maybe looked a little long, and he's gone to a medium. And I think this is just, I actually texted him. I said, Danny, that's great. You probably don't like a 10th place, but that's a win for you. Just keep building. That's all you can do now.
Yeah, he started on the large, so I ride a large with a slightly longer headset, but he shouldn't really be on, in my opinion, on the same size as me. So he started with that, and then at Leo Gang, he changed back to the medium. And then from there, he's been on the medium. I think it's slowly clicking. It just takes a lot of time to get to those extra 1% at the top. So he's slowly getting there, and I think learning the bike and getting the setup that works for him, it's slowly coming together, and hopefully he can get on that podium soon. But I think he's also in the midst of a like really hard year to do that, whereas previous years he probably could ride like a solid run for him and he would get on the podium sometimes. Now it's not like that anymore. So the sport's just kept progressing, and that's what we're probably seeing in his results as well, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've said it a few times. A win is you could have a decent run back in the day, get 7th if you're a podium contender. Now it might be 15th. So 15th to 7th is quite depressing difference, but the time gap might be the same. So yeah, you've actually nailed it. And speaking of EC.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, well, just switching bikes is so difficult, right? Like you look back at a guy like Gwenny that switched